Most people don't fail dramatically. There is no loud collapse, no headline-worthy moment of disaster. Instead, failure creeps in silently, like a shadow that stretches longer each day until it envelops the person completely. It hides in the small, almost invisible cracks of daily life. The broken promises to wake up early, the skipped workouts, the diet plans that last 3 days before melting away under stress. These failures rarely make noise. They whisper, quietly reminding the individual that change is impossible, that self-discipline is a myth, that they are weak. Over time, those whispers grow louder until they begin shaping identity itself. The person doesn't just fail, they become the person who fails. And once that identity is cemented, every attempt at transformation carries the weight of past defeat. Daniel had lived this life for over 40 years. He wasn't lazy, and he wasn't careless. On the contrary, he had spent his life fulfilling every responsibility he had been given. He was a husband, a father, a provider. He worked 12-hour days in a warehouse, managing inventory, shipping, schedules, and people. He rose at 5 in the morning and returned home at 7 in the evening. His body, once strong in youth, had been sacrificed to duty, to deadlines, to the constant stress of providing. Exercise had been a distant memory, food a convenience rather than nourishment, and rest a fleeting indulgence. Weekends were consumed by exhaustion, TV shows, fast food, and the occasional beer. He deserved it, he told himself. After all, he worked harder than most people he knew. His body had simply become collateral damage in the war of life. At 42, Daniel weighed 140 kilograms. His knees ached when he walked upstairs. Breathing required conscious effort after even minor exertion. Tying shoes had become a struggle, a complex engineering problem he had to solve slowly and painfully. He avoided physical activities with his children, using fatigue as an excuse. His wife suggested evening walks in the park, but he declined, citing exhaustion. And yet, the thing that hurt him most was not the physical pain or the growing numbers on the scale. It was the look in his daughter's eyes when she stopped asking him to play. That 7-year-old had learned, in her innocence, that her father wasn't a participant in life. He was a spectator, present physically, but absent in essence. That realization, more than the numbers, more than the aches, more than any societal judgment, cut deeper than any knife. Daniel had tried to change before. 3 times he had joined a gym, 2 months each time. 3 times he followed restrictive diets, counting calories and cutting out carbs. 5-day morning runs had ended after the 5th sunrise. Each attempt started with motivation, zeal, and hope, but each ended in frustration, self-blame, and silent surrender. Slowly, he learned to accept defeat not as a temporary setback, but as an immutable truth. This is how I am, he told himself. I'm overweight. My metabolism is slow. I've never been disciplined. I'll try again, someday. Someday never came, until the day that broke him entirely. It was a sunny Saturday morning. Daniel was in the backyard with his 9-year-old son, or at least, he was with him. He wasn't playing. He was sitting in a plastic chair, observing from the sidelines. The boy kicked a soccer ball across the yard. "Dad, can you get it?" the boy asked innocently. Daniel rose from the chair, moving slowly, feeling the familiar tightness in his muscles, the strain in his joints. He bent to pick up the ball, and could not get back up, not because of an injury, not because of pain, but because his legs no longer had the strength to support him. He fell forward onto the grass, sweating, gasping, feeling the crushing weight of his own body. His son watched silently, confused and frightened. The neighbor came out to help him up. That day, Daniel became painfully aware of the consequences of decades of neglect, of choices made under the guise of necessity, of a life lived for everyone else but himself. That night, Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, and cried. He cried for the man he had become. He cried for the son who had seen his father helpless. He cried for all the promises to himself that had been broken. His wife entered quietly, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said nothing at first. Finally, she whispered, "You need help, Daniel. Really?" That moment, though simple, was profound. It marked the first recognition that transformation would require guidance, not force. That change was possible, but only if approached differently than anything he had tried before. On Sunday, he reached out to Marcus, a friend who had successfully lost 30 kilograms and kept it off. Marcus was no stranger to struggle, but his transformation had been permanent. Daniel asked him for advice, expecting a program, a diet, or some secret exercise routine. Marcus paused, then spoke softly. "Daniel, the doctor I saw didn't give me a diet. He gave me a philosophy. You think you need pills or workouts. You need a mindset." The following Tuesday, Daniel entered the minimalist consultation room. It was nothing like a traditional doctor's office. No anatomy posters, no medical smell, just a wooden table, 2 chairs, and a large window looking out over a peaceful garden. Dr. Tishi Yamamoto, a man of 65, thin, erect, calm, and poised like a monk, greeted him. Daniel recounted his life, the exhaustion, the weight, the children, the flower bed incident. He expected a diet plan, a prescription, a series of tests. Instead, Dr. Yamamoto listened quietly, nodded, and asked, "How many times have you tried to change before?" Daniel listed 3, 4, maybe 5 attempts. "And how long did each attempt last?" the doctor asked. 2 months at most, Daniel admitted, usually a few weeks. Dr. Yamamoto's reply was simple, devastating in its clarity. "You failed because you tried to win a 40-year war in a 2-month battle. Your body took 40 years to reach this point. Your mind took 40 years to build these habits. And you think you can undo that in weeks?" Silence fell. Daniel, desperate, agreed to whatever the doctor suggested, and so began the first step: drink 1 glass of water every morning. That's all. Daniel was incredulous. He needed to lose 50 kilograms, not drink water. But something in the calm authority of the doctor made him try. That simple act, over the next 2 weeks, became his first victory. Not a victory of weight loss, not of health, but of trust in himself. Every day he completed the small task. He proved that he could keep a promise to himself. And that trust, once rebuilt, would form the foundation for every subsequent habit, every challenge and every transformation that followed. From there, additional small steps were introduced: halving his plate portions, walking a few steps to the mailbox each morning, pausing before second helpings. Each micro-action seemed trivial, but created a cascade of effects. The body relearned movement, the mind relearned control, the spirit relearned hope. Daniel's daughter noticed. She began joining him on walks, sharing small stories, holding his hand, conversations he had forgotten how to have returned. And slowly, the man who had once been a spectator became a participant again. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in the smallest increments, which eventually compounded into life-changing momentum. Daniel's journey illustrates the hidden reason most people fail. They attempt transformation as an event, not a process. They focus on the immediate results, the drastic measures, and the illusion of overnight success. But real transformation is a quiet accumulation of consistent, microscopic choices. It's the daily proof that you can be trust to yourself. It's the subtle rebuilding of identity through repeated, small wins. And it starts not with exercise, diets, or self-punishment. It starts with one tiny, achievable action, repeated long enough to become part of who you are. This is the philosophy behind what the Japanese have practiced for centuries: Kaizen, Harahachibu, Wabi-sabi, Gambaru. But in the beginning, Daniel didn't know the names. He only knew that he could keep one small promise to himself, and that promise became the seed from which his entire life would transform. He was no longer defined by past failures. He was defined by what he could do: 1 step, 1 glass of water, 1 micro-action at a time. Daniel's first week of drinking a glass of water each morning seemed almost laughable. The act itself was trivial: a single glass of water, no diet plan, no exercise routine, just water. And yet, it felt monumental. For 42 years he had broken promises to himself. Every Monday had begun with hope, every evening ended with resignation. Every diet plan, every gym membership, every attempt at transformation had collapsed under the weight of expectation and impatience. Now, a glass of water represented more than hydration. It was a test of self-trust, a daily proof that he could honor his own commitments, no matter how small. On the third morning, something shifted. As he reached for the glass on the bedside table, he realized he was thinking about it before the alarm rang. His body had learned to anticipate the small ritual. The act of drinking water, tiny as it was, became the first domino in a chain of self-discipline. Each morning, he completed it without resistance, without negotiate. Ion, without rationalizing why it wouldn't matter. That small victory strengthened him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Confidence, he realized, did not come from dramatic feats of strength or sudden transformations. It came from proving to oneself that change was possible, even in the smallest increments. After 2 weeks, Dr. Yamamoto introduced the next small challenge, halving the portions on Daniel's plate. The first few meals were agonizing. His body screamed for the fullness it had been accustomed to for decades. Hunger pangs were not hunger at all, but the echoes of habit and indulgence. His mind argued, "You're starving. This is pointless. You've earned more." But Daniel remembered the doctor's words. Wait 20 minutes before considering more. That pause, though brief, became a battlefield where habit met conscious choice. Twice in 3 weeks he returned for seconds, not because his body demanded it, but because his mind had been conditioned to expect indulgence. And each time, he resisted. Each time, he learned moderation, the Japanese principle of hara hachibu, the practice of eating until 80% full. The body, he discovered, did not need excess. The mind, however, required retraining. Movement, the doctor explained, would come next, but not in the form Daniel expected. Forget the gym, forget jogging, forget strenuous exercise. Instead, walk 20 meters, from your front door to the mailbox, every morning after your glass of water. Daniel laughed. 20 meters? That wasn't exercise. But Dr. Yamamoto's calm authority made him comply. It wasn't about exercise. It was about reintroducing movement to a body that had forgotten how to function. The RST day, his knees ached, his back twinged, his lungs burned. But the next morning, the anticipation of the walk replaced dread with purpose. By the third day, his daughter noticed. "Dad, can I come with you?" she asked. Holding her hand, he walked the 20 meters, sharing small stories about school, friends, and dreams. That moment, trivial as it seemed, marked the beginning of reconnection, to his family, to his body, and to himself. By the end of the first month, Daniel had established 3 foundational habits: morning water, halved meals, and short walks. On the scale, progress was slow, 3 kilograms, but the transformation was not in numbers. It was in agency, identity, and consistency. He had learned that small wins compounded into confidence, and confidence fueled further change. It was the principle of Kaizen, the Japanese philosophy of continuous improvement, not through grand gestures, but through tiny, repeated actions. 1% better each day, the doctor had explained. Over time, those 1% improvements would accumulate exponentially. But transformation is never linear. Challenges emerged, both internal and external. Thanksgiving arrived, a table laden with turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, and family expectations. Daniel's resolve was tested as it had never been before. His mother questioned his plate. "Is that all? Are you sick?" His brother-in-law laughed. "Come on, it's Thanksgiving. Forget the diet for a day." The temptation to abandon everything was strong. For the first time, Daniel felt panic. One day of indulgence could unravel months of small victories, couldn't it? He filled his plate and ate past fullness, experiencing the familiar shame and discomfort he had once accepted as normal. That night, staring into the mirror, he felt the old despair creeping in. "I've ruined everything. Why try?" he thought. But then, recalling the doctor's words, he understood. Stumble, yes. Fall, never. Consistency is measured not by perfection, but by returning after setbacks. This concept, wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection, became Daniel's new lens. One day of indulgence did not erase 3 months of effort. One failed attempt did not define his identity. Each stumble was an opportunity to reaffirm commitment, to practice perseverance, to embrace gambaru, enduring discomfort with the knowledge that it is temporary. The next morning he drank his glass of water, he halved his plate, he walked to the mailbox. Small actions, repeated, became the antidote to shame and failure. In the second month, movement expanded. The mailbox became the corner store. The corner store became a 5-minute walk around the block. His daughter accompanied him, turning mundane walks into shared experiences, conversations, and laughter. The body began to remember its strength. The mind began to trust itself, and the heart began to reconnect with its purpose. For Daniel, the reason for change was no longer the number on the scale. It was his family. It was the daughter whose hand he now held on daily walks. It was the son who asked questions about the world. It was the wife who watched quietly, seeing her RTN our return not only in body but in presence. By the 3rd month, 3 principles were interwoven into daily life: Kaizen through small improvements, Hara-Hachibu through moderation, and wabi-sabi through acceptance of imperfection. Daniel was losing weight, yes, 8 kilograms by the end of the 3rd month, but the true victory was identity transformation. He was no longer the man who failed constantly. He was the man who returned, who practiced, who endured. Small changes had taught him the larger lesson: transformation is not about force, but about alignment with self, family, and purpose. The months that followed introduced more micro-challenges: morning stretching, mindful eating, observing hunger cues, journaling reflections. Each task seemed minor, but each carried exponential weight. The human brain, wired to resist drastic changes, accepted these incremental shifts without triggering resistance. Habits became behaviors. Behaviors became identity. Identity became self-perception. By the 6th month, Daniel had lost 23 kilograms. He could climb stairs without shortness of breath. He could play tag with his children. He could engage in conversations about life rather than merely listen to them pass by. His body and mind had learned to trust each other again. Even setbacks became opportunities. Stressful weekends, birthdays, and holidays introduced indulgence. Each time, Daniel stumbled, but returned. Slowly, the stumbles became smaller, less frequent, less intimidating. The nervous system, once conditioned for failure, began adapting to success. The mind, once skeptical, began expecting fulfillment. The heart, once withdrawn, began feeling joy in small moments. The process was no longer about immediate outcomes. It was about building a system resilient enough to withstand human imperfection, a system that rewarded consistency over intensity, identity over effort, return over fall. Christopher was 40, weighed 142 kilos, and had spent years trying and failing to change his habits. Overworked and exhausted, he had stopped playing with his children and felt defeated. A turning point came when he realized he couldn't lift himself from the ground to retrieve his son's ball. Seeking help, he met Dr. Tishi Yamamoto, who gave him a simple but powerful system: small, consistent changes. Start with a glass of water every morning. Slowly he added eating half his portions, walking short distances, and embracing Japanese philosophies like Kaizen, continuous improvement, Hara-Hachibu, moderation, wabi-sabi, accept imperfection, gambaru, perseverance, and ikigai, purpose. Over months and years, these tiny actions compounded. He lost weight, regained health, reconnected with his family, and built a new identity rooted in consistency and self-trust. The moral is clear. Real transformation doesn't come from drastic efforts, but from small, persistent actions that build identity, resilience, and purpose. Start tiny, stay consistent, and the rest will follow.